Perspektiva. Perspektiva. U razgovoru s gostima donosimo različite perspektive o društveno važnim temama, osobnom iskustvu i životu. Utorkom od 12 sati.
Lijepi pozdrav, dragi slušatelji i slušateljice. Dobrodošli u još jednu emisiju Perspektiva. Danas je naša gošća feministica, aktivistica, borkinja za ljudska prava s posebnim naglaskom na prava žena i velika zagovarateljica prava za Romkinje, Daniela Antonovska. Ova emisija, odnosno ovaj intervju, bit će vođen na engleskom jeziku, a evo ja ću sada prepustiti zapravo glavnu riječ mojoj gošći. Hello, Mrs. Antonovska.
Anna.
How are you?
I'm fine. It's very nice to see you, all of you here in this conference in Zagreb. I saw a lot of my friends, all feminists, all fighters for women's rights, particularly for Roma women's rights.
Thank you so much for taking out the time to have this conversation with me, to share your thoughts, your knowledge, your opinion. You are truly one of the, let's say, big names in activism, especially in this context that mostly focuses on Romani women. So my first question for you would be, your academic and professional background includes gender studies and engagement in politics. How do you see these topics connected to the rights of Roma women in your country of North Macedonia?
Well, when it comes to gender studies, actually gender equality means equality for all, including Roma women. And particularly it's very important in gender studies and gender equality to have an intersectional perspective. What intersectional perspective means is taking into account that women are not homogeneous group, but on the contrary, women are very heterogeneous group because we have women with different ethnicity, women with different age, with different socio-economic background, with different skin color. So Roma women actually fits into gender studies and particularly in this intersectional perspective of gender equality. When it comes to women, peace and security, first when we hear women, peace and security, we think of something that is on a higher level and a very abstract terminology. But when we localize the agenda of women, peace and security, we get a very simple and very basic everyday needs that every woman, and particularly Roma women, needs. Women, peace and security in everyday life of all women, particularly Roma women, means a lack of poverty, lack of discrimination, a lack of hate speech, a lack of social exclusion. And for example, Roma women in North Macedonia are one of the most marginalized and vulnerable groups because they face a lot of social exclusion, a lot of economic insecurity in their daily life. When we are talking about peace and security, we are thinking also about this everyday security, about economic security, about social security. Also, if we connect this agenda, we are talking about lack of violence, about the possibility to live everyday life without violence, without hate speech, without hate crimes. So basically, Roma women in North Macedonia are one of the groups that are mostly faced with gender-based violence, with discrimination. And it's practically how in my daily work and how in my academic background I connect the agenda of women, peace and security and my work on gender equality with Roma women issues. Basically, it means a life for all of us, particularly for Roma women, without discrimination, without economic and social insecurity, because having economic and social security means a further step towards the inclusion in labor market, the inclusion in political and inclusion in societal life in overall, in the country and widely.
Well, it's a very well connected background, actually. I mean, you and I both as women know what we deal with in our everyday life. And the fact that our lives will never look the same as the lives of our male friends, colleagues, spouses, and so on. But Roma women face so-called double discrimination. They face all the problems that we face as women, but also discrimination just because they're a part of the Roma community.
Yes, actually that is a part of the intersectional perspective. Intersectional perspective means that you are not only discriminated on the basis of your gender or the basis of your sex, but you are discriminated on other backgrounds such as ethnicity, race, or skin color, social economic background, or even your educational status. Even on the basis of poverty, whether you are included in the labor market or you are not included. So basically Roma women unfortunately face, I would say not double, but multiply discrimination, yes.
And yes, they fit a lot of the categories you mentioned, unfortunately. But since this interview is done in the context of conference of Romani women, we hope to change something. So you were involved in a lot of important things in North Macedonia, in your country. So in your work, you were involved in drafting the National Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security that you mentioned. What lessons or things that came up during that process could be helpful to Roma communities to become more involved in those types of policies?
First of all, in order to prepare one good document, regardless it is a national action plan, it is a strategy or whatever kind of document it is, we need full participation and inclusion of all relevant parties and of all relevant not only stakeholders, but the community that this national action plan or strategy is intended for. So basically inclusion and participatory approach is very important, because that is a way for our voice, not only of women, but particularly in this case of Roma women and Roma community, to be heard. It's very important for the national stakeholders to include not only civil society organizations, but to include all citizens at local level, all citizens from the community, because in that way they will get relevant information about citizens' needs, about their priorities, about the problem they face. Basically, full participatory process is needed. We need consultation on a regular basis. We do not need consultation from time to time, temporary, but we need ongoing and long-term consultation and engagement with the local community, and particularly with those who are, let me say, representative of the local communities, of local Roma women, of the whole local community. Factically, Roma women and the Roma communities should be co-creators of these local action plans, regardless of the topic of the plans or the strategy. Also, it is very important to prepare a good analysis of the needs. Of their problems, of their priorities, because without having a good assessment of their needs, it is impossible to create a good strategies that will reflect their priorities and their needs. And that is a base for further implementation of the documents.
So, just to ask you a bit more in depth, since this is something that general public usually doesn't think about when we hear sort of like national action plan or national strategy for this or that. We tend to think that it will be based on the needs of the majority in some country to solve a problem. But to hear that it's actually taking into consideration every citizen of a country, the majority and the multiple minorities that exists basically everywhere, is actually really great to hear.
Yes. I have personally been included in a lot of process of drafting of different strategies and different national action plan. But as I said, it's very important to include the final beneficiaries of these strategies and action plans. And these are people who are living in a local community. Depends if it is a local action plan and it affects people living in a particular local community. If it is a national action plan, if I take into consideration, for example, Macedonia national strategy for Roma inclusion, it is important not to hear the voice of the majority of the population and majority of the population to tailor and to draft this plan, but to take inputs from a Roma community, from their civil society organizations, from Roma women organizations who actually represent the voice of Roma community and Roma people in smaller local communities.
Well, doing that and all of this, the other great work and the thorough and truly great approach that you have is probably the reason why you are one of the authors of many documents like this. Also, the original report on discrimination against Roma women. What are the most important barriers you identified? The ones that are sort of crucial, that needs to be solved more urgently, let's say it like that, than the other? And do you have any recommendations for improving the life of Roma women?
Yes, basically the report that you mentioned first was a national report, and on the base of these national reports we prepare a regional report on implementation of CEDAW Convention and Istanbul Convention, but from the perspective of Roma women. And the most important barriers and issues that we notice actually are common for all these countries in the region. First of all, Roma women, as I already mentioned, face intersectional discrimination. They are in a higher percentage affected by gender-based violence and domestic violence compared to the other groups of women. Another problem is the lack of recognition of this phenomenon of gender-based violence, particularly of some types let me say, psychological violence and economic violence, which are less recognizable by Roma women in comparison to physical violence, which is very, very visible for all of us, and it's easy to recognize that kind of violence. After that, we noticed that there is discrimination, particularly in health sector, in access to primary health care, but particularly in some specific health care services such as sexual and reproductive health care services. There were a lot of barriers, and there are still barriers to Roma women inclusion in the labor market. Because there is a lack of specifically tailored and designed measures that will address their different problems, because different communities have different problems in the inclusion in the labor market. And also there is a weak political participation of Roma women, not only in politics but in the whole society. And actually having an employment and having financial independence mean a way to political participation and furthermore to societal participation of Roma women. Also, I would say that one of the recommendations that we provided in this regional report was that institutions should have strengthened their measures, their program for Roma women particularly, that one so-called approach, one size fits all, is not a good approach, that we have to have specifically designed and tailored measures for Roma women. For example, for the economic participation, for Roma women's social entrepreneurships, and in the overall the economic entrepreneurship. Also, we have to address systematic discrimination, because a lot of Roma women said that they face discrimination even from institutions and from healthcare workers, even from employers in their employment. And also institutions, as I already mentioned, need to prepare a very good assessment of the priority and the needs and of the problems. But these assessments need to have a very strong gender component and very strong gender indicators. To have a baseline indicators, and after that to have target indicators towards which we will strive with these documents or action plan. So basically institutions have to have a very good preparation before start to work with Roma issues and problems.
Well, now when we're talking about institutions, because all of these documents, they are great. They are thoroughly done, well-researched, well-written. There is always this team of experts that's working on them. But when we look at the relationships of the institutions and Roma women, do you see anything changing compared to, let's say, 10, 15, 20 years ago? Because I can say in Croatia, institutions are run by people who belong to the majority and not the minority. So often the view is, their culture is different than ours, they have a different way of living, so these policies and the way we take care of them as our citizens don't really apply to them, since they are different from us, which is of course a way of discriminating someone. But do you see any changes after putting out a report or any action plan, giving recommendations and so on?
If I take into account what was done 10 or 15 years ago, or even 20 years ago, I would say that there is progress. There is formal institutional commitments to do more for Roma women's inclusion and in general for the inclusion of Roma community. There is a commitment for intersectionality, to take into account all perspectives. But as you mentioned, always there is a gap between what is on paper and what is implemented in practice. We still lack full implementation of this well-written and well-prepared national action plan, strategy, or whatever it is in practice. I think that this is due. Sometimes it is due to, let me say, lack of budget, lack of finance, lack of human resources, lack of technical resources, because whenever we talk with national institutions in North Macedonia, for example, they always answer to us that we have a small amount of budget, we do not have sufficient financial means, we do not have sufficient human resources or technical resources. But the other thing is, according to me, is there is not a proper monitoring, because when we start with implementation of different type of documents, we need a monitoring on a certain time period. For example, monitoring in 1 year or 3 years monitoring of the plan. So with that mechanism, monitoring as a mechanism, actually is a mechanism for controlling what has been done in 1 year, in 2 years, in a 3 years time. It's a very good controlling mechanism, but sometimes there is a lack of monitoring and also lack of evaluation, because usually institutions start with preparation and adoption with another document, with another time frame, before they provide a clear report and a clear evaluation what has been done in the previous document or previous national action plan. So it's very important to have a very good mechanisms for monitoring and evaluation. But if we compare with what was done 10, 15, 20 years ago, I would say that now we have a commitment to implement all international conventions that we sign and that we ratify. So it's another obligation that we have to fulfill. And in order, particularly in North Macedonia, to assess the EU, we have to adhere to all these international obligations and commitments. And yes, there is a change, but let me say with very small steps and with a snail's pace. But there is a change.
Well, any change is certainly better than none.
Welcomed, yes.
Although from what I know, the situation in other countries, especially in the Balkan region, we all sort of face the same problems and all have this slow approach to change. Some people would say that we are very stubborn and that our institutions just need more time. There's always a lot of bureaucracy. Something is always more urgent, but these strategies certainly can work, and hopefully in a few years will work. But maybe one of the ways to make them work quicker is sort of to get Roma women more inclusion in political life. Do you have any advice or strategies how that could be achieved?
Yes, certainly I fully agree with you that for these documents to work in practice, we need input from Roma women, and particularly for those who already have experience in certain thematic areas. As North Macedonia, we have a political participation of Roma women. For example, in the previous mandate, we had one Roma women politician in national parliament. We also have Roma women councillors at local level. So I would say that we need positive examples. We need role models of Roma women who were or are already involved in local or national politics to serve as a role model to younger generation of Roma women and girls to include in politics, to share their positive examples, to share their experience, their way of working, how they succeeded in politics. Also, I think one of the approaches is to establish a mentorship program for younger and for other generations of Roma women and girls who want to include in politics, and that mentorship program to be on a regular basis, probably to be like one-to-one mentorship trainings, or possibly group mentorship, so on. Also, civil society organizations, particularly Roma women organizations, can be a great resources in this part because they have a lot of experience in lobbying, in advocacy for certain thematic issues that are of interest for Roma community, particularly for Roma women. They can provide trainings, they can provide capacity buildings, then trainings particularly on lobbying, on advocacy, on local and national issues of relevance to Roma women. And of course we have gender quota in North Macedonia and in the whole region as far as I know, and widely in Europe. And that also should be used as resources. In North Macedonia we have 40% gender quota, but we also need, besides this gender quota, we need ethnic quota. We also have ethnic quota. That is also very important, and practical implementation of these quotas, because in some of the last election cycles, for example, it happens some political party do not put the sufficient number of women on the candidates list for local or for national parliaments, but it's good that we have sanction by the State Election Commission, and if political parties do not put sufficient number of women, then this list is withdrawn. Then, of course, we need public campaigns for raising the awareness not only of Roma communities and Roma women, but for the society as a whole, because we need a participation of all in politics and in society. We need participation of all ethnic groups in the country, and also we need campaigns to fight against discrimination, against hate speech, because we are still a society, and I suppose the whole region is still a society that is not only sexist, but is discriminatory. Hatred is also very prevalent towards ethnic groups, and we have to let me say, to fight against stereotypes and prejudice that still are prevalent towards Roma communities and Roma women.
Well, you mentioned in a few of your previous answers the EU guidelines that Macedonia now follows, since the EU is more involved in your country because of the whole acceptance process. In your experience, how important is the international cooperation, like with the European Union or United Nations, on issues of equality and Roma inclusion? Because we often know, like for example, Croatia, when we were joining the EU, it forced us to make real change real fast and not to drag it out for a few decades. And also, since a lot of the times funding is the problem, so do you see, for example, the European Union as a resource?
Yes, European Union, particularly EU and IPA funds, these are instruments for pre-accession. Countries are very good resources for North Macedonia to work on different projects that will provide protection of human rights, protection of Roma women, Roma community, and so on. Basically, all international convention and EU convention set the basis for the creation of national policies, and these are great resources for us as a country to prepare our domestic and national documents and to follow the implementation of human rights instruments at the country level. And also, I would say that we also have support and help from UN, particularly from UN women in the country. That is also a good resource for us, because it's, the name says they are oriented towards women and different groups of women. So it's very good to use these resources that are offered to us as a country. Yes, basically that.
Yes. So what do you think, which concrete measures? We talked a lot about different plans and strategies and so on. Which concrete steps should different governments and civil society organizations take to actually support Roma community, especially Roma women, in education, employment, and ultimately leadership, getting them to participate as active members alongside the majority?
I will start first with civil society organizations. They are working a lot on the terrain, working with the beneficiary, with the target groups. But here we have problems because civil society organizations are not only limited with funds, but they are more, let me say, project-based and project-oriented. So we have different kind of sustainability. Probably civil society organization can, after the project is finished, can refer to the local self-government, to the local community, to the national institution, to get some national budget or local budget and finance to continue to work. Because we can work, but we still lack finance. It's very important. Sometimes we are working a lot of voluntary work, but we are all eager to give our contribution. But really, some issues cannot be done only with voluntary work, because we need also money for that. When it comes to national and local institutions, I think that it's also important to take into account gender-responsive budgeting. That is a very important issue. Gender responsive budget, it means not some people take it very wrong because they think that it's a measurement of the money of the funds and to women and giving half to women, giving half to men. But actually 50% to women, 50% for men. But actually in practice it is not like that. In practice it is taking into account the different needs and priorities and problems of different categories of citizen, particularly different categories of women, and doing work on the ground. Also, as already mentioned, it's a very important to have a good assessment of the needs, because on the base of that assessment we create furthermore our local action plans and national strategy. Without having good assessment, we will not have good tailored activities and further implementation of these activities. When it comes to education, it's very important our country to continue with mentorship with Roma educational mediators, also with Roma health mediators. That is also very important, and it's important to have national campaigns that will fight against stereotypes and prejudice and against discrimination. It's very important to work with all institutions also, because in some of the previous research was noticed a very big, let me say, improper behavior, particularly from health professional towards Roma patients and Roma communities. So it's very important institutions and people who work in this institution to be sensitive, to have a different a cultural sensitive approach towards different ethnic groups in the society. And also we need different to support Roma women's organizations, other civil society organizations, and it is important to have cooperation. Because sometimes civil society organizations look at each other as competitors. So it's important to have cooperation and to be united as much as possible, because finally at the end they are fighting and they are working for one agenda. This is the full participation for the same goal. Yes, that is a full participation of Roma women and Roma community at local and national level. There is a lot to talk about these issues.
Yes, but all of the things ultimately come back to working together, supporting each other, institutions and civil organizations working together, us supporting one another, majority supporting the minority, and sort of fighting the stereotypes and discrimination and prejudice together. With that, I would like to thank you for your time, for taking out, I know you have a busy schedule, to come here to talk with us, to share your views with our listeners. And I wish you all the best in the fight that's still going on.
Yes, thank you for your invitation for this podcast, and also I would like to thanks to colleagues from Kali Sara for the invitation on this conference, because I really had an opportunity to see a lot of friends, to hear their perspectives, and jointly to prepare some good proposals and recommendations for our further work at regional level on Roma women's inclusion.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dragi slušatelji, to bi bilo sve za ovu perspektivu. Hvala vam na pažnji i do sljedećeg slušanja.
Perspektiva. U razgovoru s gostima donosimo različite perspektive o društveno važnim temama, osobnom iskustvu i životu. Utorkom od 12 sati.
Ova emisija sufinancirana je sredstvima Fonda za poticanje pluralizma i različitosti elektroničkih medija.